Welcome back to PHP Paradise. We're now ready to start building Mike's t-shirt store. At the end of the last stage, we had covered the basics of working with PHP and installed the software necessary for your computer to function as a web server. Go ahead and start up your local web server again, and then browse to the root of it. Unless you've changed something since last time, you should see a directory listing with your test.php file in it. We'll be using PHP to generate HTML files, but we won't be covering how to write the HTML and CSS themselves. I've put together some HTML, CSS, and image files we can use as a starting point. Go ahead and get that zip archive in the download section on this page. Once the download completes, unzip the archive. Open up the extracted Shirts for Mike folder, and you'll see in there some other folders and an index.html file. Select all these items and move them to your htdocs directory. Let me show you in the browser what we'll be starting with. Refresh the root of your web server, and you should now see the home page of Shirts for Mike instead of a directory listing. Most web servers are configured to display a file named index.html or index.php at the root by default. Right now, it's displaying the new index.html file. Now open up that HTML file in your text editor. You can see that I'm referencing an external CSS file here. I'm also referencing some external images. This page has a number of links to other pages that we haven't built yet, both in the navigation and in the list of latest shirts. I've put a hash sign here as a temporary location for now, and we'll update those links as we build out the pages. There are two things I want to cover before we start adding those new pages. The first has to do with file extensions for PHP. Let's start by changing the title tag and the copyright date to use PHP. By now you should be familiar with these two commands. Let's save this page and go back to the browser. When I refresh the page, we'll see something that you might not have expected to see. The PHP code here in the title tag, and nothing here for the date. Our web server did not execute the PHP code in this file. Why not? Because our file has an extension of .html. Our PHP server will only examine a file and execute the PHP code in it if that file has an extension it identifies as PHP, something like .php. Let's close this file and rename it from the sidebar, from index.html to index.php. Now, when we open the file in the browser, the web server recognizes the extension, executes the PHP code, and displays the title and the year correctly. The second thing I want to cover before we start adding new pages involves PHP errors. Let's open up that renamed index.php file and introduce an error. Let's change echo to something invalid like echo with an extra C. Save the file again and go back to the browser. Uh-oh, our PHP error produced an error page. You see, HTML is very generous. The browser ignores your mistakes and tries the best it can to render the page. PHP, on the other hand, is much stricter and much less forgiving. Any syntax error can result in the page not loading correctly. Only part of the page may load, or you may see a white screen or the browser's error page like this. Go back to your file now and remove that extra C and save the page. Click refresh to see our homepage working again. Much better. With those two notes about the file extensions and PHP errors, we're now ready to start building out more of our store. We have the homepage working as a PHP file, processing a little bit of code to handle the title tag and the date in the footer. Now we're ready to add some new pages. Be sure to have your htdocs directory open in your text editor. Let's create a new file for the contact page, contact.php. There's quite a bit of HTML that will be the same across all the pages of our store, which you can see here in index.php. Most notably, the header with its logo and menu, as well as the footer with its social media links and copyright statement. Your first inclination might be to copy that code from index.php and paste it into contact.php. But generally speaking, duplicating code is not what you want to do. If you copy the same code into two places, you'd have to make any future changes in both places. It's all too easy to overlook one of those places and then parts of the site that should look the same end up diverging. If we were just using static HTML files, we'd have a difficult time achieving this. But since we're using PHP, we can put all that common code into one place. With our t-shirt store, we could put the logo and the menu into their own file, and then we could dynamically include them at the top of every page. Let's create a new PHP file to contain the header. Files like this are called include files because they get included in other PHP files. It's often a good idea to put files like this in their own folder. Let's create one. I usually name this folder includes, or inc for short. Let's create a file in that folder called header.php. We'll put in this file all the code from index.php that will be the same across all the pages. Let's start at the opening HTML tag and go all the way down to here. This includes the logo and the navigation. The image of Mike the Frog and a list of latest shirts is specific to the home page, and we'll leave that here. We'll cut this code from index.php and paste it in our header file. One of the items in this file is a link to the contact page, which we have now created. Let's update that link from # to contact.php. With the header moved to an include file, we'll need to write some PHP code to bring that header into the other pages. The PHP command for this is include. Let's add an opening PHP tag and a space at the top of our file, followed by the command include. Inside a pair of parentheses, you then reference the file using a relative path, a quotation mark, followed by the folder name, a slash, the file name, and then another quotation mark. End the command with a semicolon, a space, and a closing PHP tag. We want this same header in the contact page, so let's copy this PHP command and paste it into contact.php. This page will have slightly different HTML below the header, a div with two classes, section and page, and an h1 tag with the heading contact. Let's switch back over to the browser now and refresh the home page. You shouldn't have noticed any change. We're now using two PHP files to generate the HTML for this instead of just one, but the final HTML that gets generated is the same. We can now click on the link here to navigate to contact.php. When the contact page loads, you'll see the same menu as the home page, included from header.php, with the headline found in contact.php below. We're making some really good progress here, with two different PHP files using one common include file for some shared code. Let's now create another include file to contain the shared code from the bottom of the files. We'll also create the shirts listing page and include both the header and the footer into it. Be sure to have index.php open in your text editor and scroll to the bottom. The code from here down will be the same in all our files, so we'll put that in a separate include file. Create a new file inside our includes directory, this one called footer.php. Let's paste the shared code from index.php here into footer.php. We'll need to update the two pages we have so far to use this include file. We'll first add this block of code to index.php. We'll also copy the code and paste it into contact.php. Let's next create a new file for the shirts landing page, shirts.php. We want to include the header just like we're doing on the other two pages. Then we need the div for the page content with the title of the page, Mike's Full Catalog of Shirts. Then we'll end this file by including the footer. We now need to update the menu so that shirts in the navigation links to our new page. As we do this, you'll be able to see how our technique of including files already makes it easier to maintain our store as it grows. We need to update the link on 3 different web pages, but since they all 3 include the same header.php file, we only have to make that change in one place. Back in our text editor, open header.php. We'll modify the href for the shirts link from # to shirts.php. Save all these files and go back to the browser. After you refresh the home page, we can now click on all the links here to navigate to all the pages: the shirts page, the contact page, and back to the home page. We still have a couple more changes to make to the menu, but to make that happen, we'll need to cover some new programming concepts, variables and conditionals. We now have 3 web pages, all using the same header and footer files. We could do this because the HTML code at the top and bottom of each web page is identical. Well, the truth is, the code is mostly identical for each page. There are a couple of things that I want to be a little different from page to page. The first one is the title tag. Here in header.php, within the HTML head tag, we have a title tag that defines the title of the page. This title appears in the browser, and it also appears in results on search engines. Right now, all 3 of our pages have the same title because it is specified in our header include file. But don't worry, we still want to use these include files to handle the code that is the same, but we'll use something new to handle the differences: variables. A variable in a programming language is an entity that can hold a value. Think of it like an empty bucket that you can put something in. In your code, you can create a variable, give it a name, and then assign it a value. Your code can then reference that value by variable name instead of by value. Let me give you a couple examples of how this works. I've shown you the PHP code to display the current year a couple of times already. Let's rewrite this command to use a variable. To create a new variable in PHP, you simply write a command that assigns it a value. Variable names in PHP start with a $sign. The equal sign is used to assign a new value to a variable. So this code will create a new variable named year and assign it a value equal to the current year. Throughout the rest of our code now, we can reference the year variable whenever we want to use that value. Remember that we end each PHP command with a semicolon. I've mentioned before that additional PHP commands can be added after that. I haven't shown that to you yet, but let's do that now to echo out the value from our variable. A quick note on formatting. When you write multiple PHP commands within one code block, it's usually best to put each command on its own line. You'll typically see a block of code written like this. Variables in programming can change values as your code runs. I'll show you one more example. We'll start with a variable to hold the name of the product. If the value of a variable will be a string of text, you'll need to surround that value in quotation marks. Next, we'll add a second command to create a variable for the price of the product. If the value of a variable is a number, you do not need to surround the value in quotation marks. Next, we'll add some HTML to display the products. Later in our code, we can then change these two variables to hold the values corresponding to a different product. We'll use the same code to display the second shirt, but this time with different values in the variables. Variables are incredibly powerful. We'll be talking about them quite a bit more throughout the project, covering some sophisticated ways to work with them. But this brief introduction should cover what we need to make the title tag dynamic. I have a code challenge for you to make sure you understand variables so far. Then we'll dive back into our header.php file. We talked about variables last time. Now let's use them to change the title tag from page to page. Open up contact.php in your text editor. Let's start by specifying the page title for the contact page. Right before the line where we include header.php, let's create a variable called page title. We can make up just about any name we want for our variables. There's no predefined list of variables we have to choose from or anything. Let's assign it a value of contact Mike. If we assign this value to our variable in our code before we include header.php, then we can reference this variable in that include file. Open up header.php. Here we have a title tag with static content, shirts for Mike. Let's replace that with our variable. Be sure to type the variable name exactly. Upper and lowercase characters do matter. Save both files and take a look at the contact page in the browser. Notice how the title on the tab has changed. When contact.php first loads, our code creates a variable named page title and assigns it a value of contact Mike. Then our code includes header.php, which echoes out the value in that page title variable. Let's add the same variable with different values to our other pages. Open up shirts.php and add the same variable here. Open up index.php and do the same thing. Save these two files and view the site in the browser again. As we click through the menu, you can see the title changing as we go from page to page. By assigning a value to a variable before the header file gets included, we can use the same PHP code for all the pages, but still give them unique values for their title tags. There's one more thing I want to change from page to page. When a visitor views the list of shirts, or any of the shirt details pages we'll be building soon, I would like the shirts link in the navigation to be underlined to indicate that the visitor is currently within the shirts section. I'd like the same thing to happen on the contact page. To accomplish this, we'll have to make the HTML for the menu a little bit different from page to page, just like we did for the title tag. We'll use another variable here, but we'll also have to use another new programming concept, conditionals. A conditional in a programming language provides a way to have certain commands executed only if some condition is met. You'll often use conditionals with variables. You'll check the value of a variable, and if the value meets a certain condition, then you'll execute another piece of code. Let's first create a variable named today and assign it a value of Monday. You must end the PHP command with a semicolon, and it's usually a good idea to move down to the next line. The simplest form of a conditional in PHP is an if statement. Simply type the word if to begin an if statement. You then specify the condition you want to check in parentheses. Let's check if the variable we created named today has a value of Monday. Notice the double equal sign in conditional checks. The single equal sign here assigns the value. It actually changes the value in the today variable. The double equal sign here checks the value. It simply looks at the variable to see what the value is. After you check the value in an if statement, you can then write code that should execute only if this condition is met. You use curly braces to surround the conditional code, an open curly brace in front of the code, and a closed curly brace at the end. Any code in between the curly braces will get executed only if the today variable has a value of Monday. Let's echo out a nice message appropriate for a Monday. Each PHP command that gets executed inside the curly braces of an if statement needs a semicolon after it. But the if statement itself doesn't, and neither do the curly braces. Think of them as wrappers around PHP commands that need to be executed. They're not exactly PHP commands themselves. You'll often see an if statement written out as at least 3 lines, like this. Notice these extra spaces here in front of the echo. This is a common coding practice, indenting lines of code that are within or subordinate to other lines of code. If we ran this code right now, PHP would echo out our friendly Monday message. Let me change the today variable to something different. If we ran this code now, PHP would no longer display a message. The today variable equals Saturday, not Monday. Let's take a look at one more example before we get back to our header.php file. Let's start off another block of code with a variable named hour. We'll assign it a value equal to the current hour in 24-hour format, with possible values of 0 to 23. Next, we'll write a conditional that checks if it is before noon, that is, if the hour is less than 12. If so, we'll echo out "Good morning." Next, let's check if it's noon or later, and if it's before 5 o'clock. We can do that with a slightly more complicated check. If the hour is greater than or equal to 12, and if hour is less than 17, then we can echo out "Good afternoon." Let's add a couple more checks to cover the rest of the day. If the hour is greater than or equal to 17, that is if it's after 5 o'clock, and the hour is less than 20, that is, it's between 5 o'clock and 8 o'clock, let's echo out "Good evening." If it's after 8 o'clock, we'll say "Good night." Just like variables, there's a lot more I could say about conditionals, and I will say more about them as we go throughout the project. But that should cover what we need to make this last change to our menu. I have a quiz for you now to make sure you understand conditionals so far, and then we'll put them into practice in our header file. Great job! It looks like you have a handle on simple variables and conditionals. Let's now add some conditionals to our header file and get that appropriate link underlined. Open up header.php in your text editor. I have coded the CSS file here to underline links in the navigation with a particular class, a class of on. Adding this class to our navigation link will make it underlined. But we can't just add this class in plain HTML, or the link would be underlined on every page. Instead, we need to add it with PHP in a conditional. We need a variable that tells us what section we're in. If we're in the Shirts section, we can add this class to the Shirts link. Let's open up shirts.php and create a variable for this. Right after the line where we created the page title variable, let's create a new variable named section. We'll assign it a value of shirts. Remember to use the single equal sign here when assigning a value. With the single equal sign, this command means to the variable named section assign a value of shirts. Back in our header.php file, we can write a conditional to check the value of the section variable. Remember to use the double equal sign here. With that double equal sign, this command means if the variable named section has a value of shirts, then echo on. For the contact link on the next line, we can add a similar conditional. Let me give you a word of caution. It can get a little confusing writing PHP code that conditionally generates a piece of HTML. In a case like this, I would recommend adding the plain HTML you want first, before writing the PHP code. Then modify the file to echo out the HTML using PHP. Right at the beginning of that HTML, add an opening PHP tag. At the end, add a closing PHP tag. Then go back and wrap the HTML in the echo command with quotation marks and a semicolon. After all that's in place, then wrap the echo command in the conditional. If the section variable has a value of contact, then we want to mark this contact link as active. Of course, we also have to set that variable on the contact page. Open up contact.php. Let's assign a value to a section variable right here below the command to assign a value to the page title variable. Again, be sure the variable name matches exactly. Save all these pages and refresh the site in your browser. When we're on the Shirts page, we'll now see the Shirts link underlined. When we're on the Contact page, that link will be underlined. We're making some great progress on our t-shirt store. We have 3 different web pages in place, and we've learned about variables and conditionals. We'll spend some time next on the Contact page, adding form fields to it and handling submissions. Before we get to that though, let's wrap things up here with a code challenge.